you know. But on the other hand, there's nothing wrong with a classic, right? A great clean tasting beer and a burger.
That's right. Well, and that great classic, I mean, one of the reasons why it becomes a classic is what we were talking about earlier. That beer has a cleansing effect, right? Cleans your palate, allows you to enjoy that next bite of food every time. Oh wow, more great food.
Jinkies.
So Kevin, I just keep getting more and more excited by the more food that we get and the idea of talking through these pairings. I guess the interesting thing to me about these two plates is, you know, we've got a lighter fish, battered and fried, and then we've got a great sirloin here with all those grill flavors that you were talking about. I mean, in some ways, these two dishes couldn't be more different.
Correct. Yeah, they are fair ways apart.
But in this cool way that we're talking about pairings, I mean, maybe we could start with, I could ask you this question of, you know, these dishes are very different. Is there one beer on the table here that you think works with both? Works either way?
My hunch would be that the brown ale would go both ways, right? I think that there are a couple ideal pairings on the table as well.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, the brown certainly being that sort of malty, that darker, you know, edging towards that darker style. That makes a lot of sense to me in the sense of bridging and balancing, right?
And there's a little bit of tradition there, right, too? A great English style ale with fish and chips. Come on,
that's right.
Right?
Yeah. So, and then what were you thinking are the specific pairings that you really want to explore?
Well, specifically, I don't think there's a better pairing on our menu, and of course, that's my opinion, right? One man, one opinion. The red ale, which is a traditional English bitter, with the fish and chips, is out of sight.
Oh, well, I'm going to go for that first then.
Dive in. I'll cut you some steak.
Okay. Well, you know, when you talk about tradition, right? I mean, these pairings also come about for certain reasons, right? So
absolutely.
Very, you know, everyday dish almost in that culture, right? In that cuisine.
Yep.
And to your point, almost an age-old classic expression of English brewing, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Fine English bitters / pale ale, you know, that it's always deceiving to people. They hear bitter and they think bitter beer, but it's a very balanced beer, great malt character to it, great hop balance, slightly fruity on the end.
And that's a good point too. I mean, bitter in today's consumer language, right? Bitter doesn't always mean bad, right? I think a lot of people today hear the word bitter and they think, ooh, that must be bad. When actually, as we're talking about flavors, complementary, balancing, bitter is a really important flavor component.
Just helping people wrap their brains around it, right? It's just vocabulary.
Right.
So we may not call this a bitter, we call it a red ale, and we talk about it being balanced. And that makes all the difference in terms of the perception of what's coming down on your plate.
That's exactly right. So what are you drinking with this steak?
Well, I jumped into the stout, and I did it for two reasons. We've got great roasted flavors in the stout to go with the great grill flavor, but I find the stout does a great job, especially those roasted flavors, of cutting into some of this gorgonzola cheese, right, which is very rich and creamy. So there's a great kind of contrast between those two on my palate that really works well between the creaminess and the sharp roasted flavors.
Great point.
And I think I'm going to do me a little fish and chips.
Okay.
Because I can.
Let me pass that red over your way.
Nice. Highly recommended. And the brown ale will be great with the steak as well because, you know, again, those same roasted flavors, caramely and round, really, really nice.
Well, you know, as we've been tasting a lot of dishes and we've been tasting it with a lot of beers, it strikes me that that brown ale is the ultimate equalizer.
It's also a great aha beer. For some folks, it's a very intimidating looking beer if they're not used to drinking beers with darker color, right? We believe, like with stout, that darker beer equals more flavor, more alcohol, more, and more, when really it's a great balanced beer. It's got some sweetness to it and some caramely toffee flavors to go to roast. I've heard stories about our servers in the past blindfolding guests and having them taste a few beers and they're totally shocked that their favorite beer is this dark beer we call brown ale.
You know, that is one of my favorite experiences with customers, right? When you can surprise and delight, and then they just, the look on their face, the big smile. I mean, it's just amazing, isn't it? That's a great feeling.
Well, it's a great opportunity. I mean, we're very fortunate because this is some of our everydays, right? But folks don't always have time to sit down and take a chance to get a bunch of beers, you know, and I would encourage our staff to think about that. You know, you want to try a few different plates? Yeah, I can get you a few different beers that will go well with all those plates, and you can share, compare notes, talk about it. I mean, I think that's an opportunity we can provide for folks.
Well, you're absolutely right, and it strikes me as you say that you know, we have a tendency to use our sampler just to taste through beers, but wouldn't it be great to combine that sampler with the foods that you're eating and give our guest that chance to really explore?
Well, after this experience here today, I think that's almost a no-brainer.
That's right.